Ms. Nicole and I were looking through some of your notebooks yesterday, just so I could get an idea of what your inquiry projects are about and the types of things that you've been learning and working on. And one thing that I noticed is that your notebooks are a great place that you're using to keep track of all of the notes and things that you're learning in Reader's Workshop and about your inquiry project. And it gave me this idea that there's another way that I can teach you to use your notebooks. And so a different way that we can use our notebooks during Reader's Workshop, especially when we're working with information texts like you all have in front of you, is to capture our thinking. When we capture our thinking about our reading, it really helps us understand our reading better. And that's important in all reading, but especially in information text, because there's so much information that sometimes it's hard to remember it, or there's like a lot of big words to be able to say it again in a way that makes sense to you. So today, we're going to be thinking about how we can use our notebooks to capture our thinking about our reading. So we're going to be doing some writing and some reading. And when I thought about that, I thought it's something that's really important, but sometimes it's hard to do. And so I wanted to do a little bit of research for you and think about what's the best way we could do that. And so last night I was looking online and I was looking for different ways that other teachers do this in their classroom. And I found this article from Harvard. Have you guys heard of Harvard before?
Yes.
So I know that you're in 5th grade and you're not going to Harvard soon, but I also know Miss Nicole said that you guys are so smart. And so I thought, well, maybe if I found an article from Harvard and I told you a little bit about it, it would really help us think about our reading. So I'm not going to have you read the article. I read it. But there was one part of the article that I found. The title of the article is called 6 Reading Habits to Develop in Your First Year at Harvard. So when kids go to, or when you finish high school and you go to Harvard, this article is written for those people. But I think it's really going to help you guys. And so the third habit that they talked about is the one that I wanted to share with you, and I wrote it right up there. So I'm going to read it, and while I read it, I want you to listen, and I want you to think, how might that relate to my writing about reading information texts? So it says, outline, summarize, analyze. Take the information apart, look at all of its parts, and then try to put it back together again in language that's meaningful to you. The best way to determine that you've really gotten the point is to be able to state it in your own words. It's a lot of information, so I'm going to read it one more time, and then we're going to talk a little bit about that and see if we can figure out what it means. So it says, outline, summarize, analyze. Take the information apart, look at its parts, and then try to put it back together again in language that is meaningful to you. The best way to determine that you've really gotten the point is to be able to state it in your own words. So I want you to just think about that for a few minutes. And if you think you have an idea about what that means, just give me a little thumbs up on your knee. But really take a few minutes to think about that. I see thumbs going up. So what I'd like you to do is, do you have partners on the carpet? Do you have reading, turn and talk partners? Not really. Okay, so
make them by
okay, so I want you to choose somebody who's sitting close to you, and if it needs to be a group of 3, it can be a group of 3, and talk about what you think this means. Go ahead.
I think it means that outline, summarize, analyze. Basically what you do is you take apart a text, look at its parts, understand its parts, and put it back together so that you can say it in your own words. understand something, but I think you don't understand, and then you try to look for words, like, you can't understand.
Then you can put it back together.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Great. Does anybody want to share what you think this might mean? Yeah, what do you think?
I think it means that you have to take apart a text, an informational text, and look at its parts and think of them in your own words and write it down.
Exactly. So when you look at the different parts, like I know you've been practicing main idea, so when you look at those, break it apart and look at the different parts and think about the different main ideas that you found, then you want to be able to talk about it in your own words and not just read back exactly what was written on the page. And that really helps us understand what we're reading about in the informational text better. And so that's what I'm going to teach you today. I'm going to teach you that informational readers write to understand what they're learning as they read. And this can be really hard. So we're going to try and do a little bit of it together. Then you're going to get a chance to practice while we're all together before I send you off to do it on your own. So I am going to erase this. And I know that one book that you have been reading in class is When Lunch Fights Back. And so we're going to use that as an example today. Okay. And so I hadn't read this book before, but Miss Nicole let me borrow it, and I started reading it last night, and this is a great book. And so, yeah, there's lots of gross things in it, which makes it pretty cool. And so I wanted to think about, there's a lot of different types of information in this book. And so it's hard to think about, like, what are the most important parts. And so when I was looking at it and just sort of flipping through, one of the parts that seemed really important to me are these sections that say the science behind the story. And so the one that I was especially interested in when I was looking at the science behind the story is this one. Do you guys remember reading this one? No? Okay, maybe, have they read this one?
No,
A long time ago. Okay, I'll give you like a little reminder.
we only read about the
We only read about the Antarctica.
Well, I'll tell you about this one.
It's
It's okay.
She'll tell you. She'll fill you in.
So this one has these two little fish, and they have a really tricky name. I was trying to figure out how to pronounce it. It's called the two-spot steinets or something like that.
Oh, I read this.
And the fish like attack each other. And so it was pretty interesting. So I was thinking about, okay, so if I was going to take the parts apart, take the pieces apart and try to explain them in my own words and then put them back together, what that might look like. And so I was trying to think like, okay, well, how might I do that? It's a lot of information. And so one thing I was thinking is, well, maybe I could make like a cause and effect diagram to help me understand it. But then I thought a little bit and I thought, that's not actually what you guys are studying for your inquiry projects, because you're really thinking about main ideas about scientists. So if I just took this apart and focused on the different causes and effects and why these fish attack each other, it's not really going to help at what you're studying for your inquiry project. So do you have in your readers' notebooks the page that looks like this that says main idea about scientists?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's see if you can find that. If you don't have it, it's okay. I see some people found it
Here.
in Minilessons.
Main ideas about scientists?
Yeah, it looks like, can I look it up?
No, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like this one.
I'm an expert.
And if you don't have it, it's okay. You can look on with somebody who's sitting close to you. So I was thinking about that page, and then I was thinking, you know, you guys are really studying that, the main ideas about scientists. And so then I started thinking, well, what's a better way if I'm looking at this text that I can break it apart and think about those main ideas to help me understand? And so then I started thinking, well, maybe I could make a different kind of chart. So instead of making a cause and effect chart, I started thinking like, well, maybe I could do something and just jot something down. So if this was my notebook, I would just like jot this down, and I might make 3 columns here, like that. And then I was thinking like, okay, so one of the things on your main ideas about scientist chart is that scientists work in incredibly different ways. What's another thing that's on your main ideas about scientist chart?
Scientists often have a research focus, a topic they really know well.
Great. And what's another one?
Scientists ask a lot of questions and they do research to answer them.
Yeah, so maybe that's a better way to go. So then I was thinking, well, in this book right here, like I started putting a little sticky note on each of the different pages where it had the science behind the story. And there was a lot of them, the science behind the story. And so then I thought, well, then I could figure out what each of the different scientists are. So maybe one of my columns here would be that I would have scientists. And then I would think about those things that you just told me, and you said they have to have a research focus. So I might put research focus. And then you told me that they had to ask questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to keep track of what questions they asked. Is there anything else on that chart? No? What else is there?
Scientists work in different ways.
They work in different ways, so maybe like their research process is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So research process. And so then I was thinking what I would be able to do is to read through each one of these things and put down who the scientist was, what their research focus is, what questions they asked, and what their process was. And then as I was reading also, I noticed that in some of them, they do some things that are like pretty interesting. So in one of them, there was information about a scientist who studied the hagfish. You guys heard of that or remember that? The hagfish, and it got slimed. Yeah, and then I thought that was really interesting, and so I might want to just add one more column that says other or category. And then if I come across some really interesting information like that, I can add it in. And so if I did this, and I started filling out that chart while I was reading, then I would be able to compare what some of the scientists do. I could look and see who does different things, and it would give me a lot of information from all the different parts. And then if I was talking about it to somebody, like say I wanted to tell you about what I was studying, then I could use my chart and I could tell you about the different scientists, and I would be able to say it in my own words. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to give you a chance to try that right now. So the first thing that I want you to do is you have your articles in front of you. So I want you to just skim through your article. We'll take like 1 or 2 minutes and find maybe a page or a part that you think you want to try this with. And when you think you've found that part, just put your finger on it so I know that you found the part.
If your article isn't super sciencey, so like Olivia's or a Timo, maybe this is a good time to grab just a nonfiction book from the pile. A more sciencey one, it'll make it a little easier. Because I know you kind of have some interesting topics, but they might be hard to do this way. Same with Martine. Martine, maybe. If you're struggling, just find a nonfiction science book. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Me basas uno día, no sé cómo voy a pasar eso. Me basas
That
uno
one
día,
too.
hacer-
Yeah, it might be easier. I'll grab some for you just in case.
Okay.
Okay, so then just flip that open and find the parts that you might want to try.
Yeah, this even you could do it with them because this is a great one.
Okay, see, some people have found a part already and some people are still scanning.
Wait, so is mine good, Nicole? Is mine okay?
Just
one.
choose a part, you don't
it'll
have to
make
read
it a
it,
little
but just
easier.
choose a part that you might want to
Here, Tina.
focus on.
Try this. It might make it a little easier. I just know that your topics are really complicated. Yours might be okay. You okay?
Okay, I see a lot of people have put their finger on a part.
That's
Take
probably when you put your fingers, you probably really want to study.
for right now. It's just for practice, so yeah. Okay, take about 10 seconds if you haven't found a part yet. Okay, so now that we've got a part, the really hard part is thinking about the main ideas you already know about your topic and then what you want to understand about this. So we want to think about how could we now use our notebooks to help us understand this part that we've just put our finger on. So what I want you to do is to find a blank page in your notebook. And you might want to start the same way I did, where you try to make a chart to help you understand. We're just going to do a little bit of the chart. So I want you to try to get a chance to practice. And it might look just like mine, but it might look different. You might have something else that's going to help you understand that part.
Sophia, if you want to use your article and talk about it, you chart it. That's okay. Okay.
So I didn't give you a lot of time, but I wanted to just give you a chance to really think about how this might work with your article. You're going to have a chance to go off and try this. And you might find, if you did the same one I did, you might find, you know what, that didn't actually work for my article. I need to make something that looks a little bit different, and that's okay. Because if you remember when I started, at first I thought maybe I would compare and contrast those two fish, but then I realized that wasn't really going to help me, and so I changed my idea. So what I want you to do before I send you off to continue to read and do your research is just to remind you that this reading notebook that you have is not just a place to collect information, but it's a place that you can also write about what you're learning to help you really think and get ideas. That's going to help you with your research. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and send you off. You can go to the spot that you usually read at. And while you're reading your article, try to make a chart or do some sort of writing that's going to really help you understand what you're reading today.